Let's bring in Alex Vogel and Richard Goodstein now. Alex formerly served as the chief counsel to then Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist. He's now the CEO of the Vogel Group. Richard is a Democratic strategist who previously advised Bill and Hillary Clinton. Good Wednesday morning to you both. Richard, let's start with you. Yesterday, some voters told CBS News why they're supporting Platner in spite of the controversies he's facing. Let's just play some of that for our viewers.
The allegations didn't really affect the way that I felt that Graham Platner would show up for me and show up for Mainers.
They're disturbing, and we've weighed them and talked about them, and we're not happy. But I believe his statements that he's evolving, as we all are, and he does seem to have a penitent heart.
They are concerned about them, but it didn't change their support for him. Do you suspect that for the general election, voters may have a different opinion?
Look, Susan Collins has to wake up this morning, Errol, a lot less confident than she was this time yesterday, because the voters, frankly, don't seem all that interested. Granted, this was a Democratic primary, but we've seen voters in Texas vote for a ridiculously flawed candidate. And we've seen Republicans vote for perhaps the most flawed person in politics, Donald Trump. So I think what it's going to come down to for general election voters is, yes, Platner has his flaws. And if he wins, he should send a thank you note to Donald Trump. But voting for Susan Collins is voting for somebody who's going to support the Iran war, who's going to support health care access problems, who's going to support inflation as a result of the Iran war. And the list goes on and on, Roe versus Wade being cast aside. So that's really what it's going to come down to. And I think what Democrats have decided, and frankly, independents, is enough of kind of being holier than thou. We know what the stakes are. And I think at the end of the day, Platner is going to be close, but I think he's likely to pull this out.
Alex, as Richard said, we've also seen controversy surrounding GOP Texas candidate Ken Paxton. He had the impeachment trial, securities fraud indictment, some personal issues. And we raised this question earlier in the show, but does character truly matter anymore for either party?
So there's no doubt that some character-related issues that 15, 20 years ago would have been immediately disqualifying, voters are willing to work past. That's especially true in a primary when you've been out of power. So as the Democrats look at the Senate, and they can't get there without Maine, they're like, hey, we'll take anybody who wants into this race. I disagree in terms of how Senator Collins likely feels this morning about having to run against Platner. It's one thing to have marital issues or relationship issues. It's another to disagree on some key policy issues. With Platner, you're talking about abuse allegations, a Nazi tattoo, the stuff he's posted online. These are not things that are traditionally defensible. And I think it's going to be problematic for them when they get to a general election, and they're not just people who are going to pull that lever no matter what. He was functionally on the ballot by himself.
Let's jump over to California. Richard, the president and other top Republicans continue to push concerns about the integrity of elections there because it's taking so long. The two candidates competing for governor are expressing opposing views. Let's play that.
The simplest, most immediate thing we can do to fix our election system in California, what is it? Voter ID. Yes, yes. Voter ID. If we had voter ID, we wouldn't need all this endless checking of signatures and verification.
I think it's a good thing that there's so many votes that it's taking a little while to count. I don't think it's a great thing that it takes such a long time, but the most important thing is that we count every vote.
And we should note there is no evidence of any issues in the vote tally, and California historically takes this long to do this. But, Richard, should they be able to count votes faster?
Of course, they should, but let's make sure we're keeping our eye on the ball here, Errol. This is all an effort by Republicans to support what we know, because the Republicans are likely to lose control of the House, could easily lose control of the Senate, and Donald Trump is going to make a fuss and accuse Democrats of all sorts of misconduct and rigged elections and everything that we've heard from him going back to 2016, of course, 2020, now in the crosshairs with all the times that he makes that point. So that's all that's happening here. Yes, California has had problems getting a timely count of the ballots for many, many years, long before COVID. But all this is parroting what they're hearing from their dear leader, Donald Trump, who insists on making issues where there are none because he doesn't have the merits to run on.
And Alex, you know, what's interesting is when you think back to 2016, I was in Washington and I remember Donald Trump complaining about a rigged election right before it was called for him. So should we expect more of this from the president come November?
We'll see what the president has to say about the election results. But let me say this about California. It is not just the president. It is not even just Republicans who are talking about how irrationally ridiculous it is that you can have a state who cannot count simple votes in a reasonable, timely manner. It does not take weeks to count votes any place else in the country. Scale doesn't account for it. Sure, California is a big state. I live in Virginia. We can count them in one night. Even if you 5x'd that, great. We'll wait till 3 in the morning. It is emblematic of a broken system that it takes weeks to get an accurate vote count. The fact that it's been going on for years doesn't make it okay.
All right, Alex Vogel and Richard Goodstein, great to have you with us this Wednesday.